Good afternoon, John Lewis.
Good afternoon.
What is your full name?
My full name is John Robert Lewis.
Why did your parents select this name for you?
I'm not so sure my parents made the decision to select this name for me. I think two of my uncles, two of my mother's brothers came together, and one had the idea that I should be called John. The other one had the idea I should be named Robert. So they combined the two, and I became John Robert. And one of my uncles would call me Bob. And but for the most part, my family all call me Robert. And later, my father started calling me Bob because my uncle called me Bob, but I'm known by my family as Robert.
Do you have a nickname?
Well, when I met Dr. King, he asked me on one occasion, he said, "Are you the boy from Troy?" And so people started calling me the boy from Troy.
Where were you born and how did your family come to live there?
I was born outside of Troy, Alabama, about 10 miles outside of Troy. Troy is about 50 miles south of Montgomery and about 45 miles in a different direction from Tuskegee. In 1944, when I was 4 years old, my father and mother had saved $300, and with the $300, they bought 110 acres of land. And my family still own that land today. We raise a lot of cotton and corn, peanuts, hogs, cows, and chickens. And I love going back there to visit. At night, it's darker than 1,000 midnights. And but in the summer, it's very hot, and it's very quiet. It's very, very quiet and very peaceful.
Did your family have any chores?
Oh yes, we all have something to do. We all had roles to play, and if we didn't do what we were supposed to do, we got in trouble. Like we had to feed the chickens, water the cows and the hogs, but we had to pick the peas and cut the okra, but we also had to work on the farm.
What was your least favorite chore?
Oh, my least favorite thing to do on that farm was picking cotton in the hot sun. I enjoyed working with the chickens because I love the chickens. They were so innocent and seemed like they needed help. And I became good at raising chickens and gathering the eggs and talking to the chickens and telling them what to do and what not to do and telling them to be quiet and not to fight.
Who are your childhood heroes?
Well, growing up there, I guess some of my family members, my mother and father, my uncles who had left rural Alabama, and some had gone into the military and they would come back home to visit. They had moved away to Buffalo, New York, and seemed like they were living well or doing well, and I admired them. But some of my teachers, I had a wonderful teacher in the elementary school, a wonderful teacher. She lived in Montgomery, and she would come to rural Alabama during the week to stay to teach. And she was also a librarian, but she would say, "Read, my child, read, my child." And I tried to read everything. When I was growing up, we didn't have a subscription to the newspaper, but my grandfather had one. We were too poor to have a subscription to the newspaper. So when my grandfather would finish reading his newspaper each day, we would get his newspaper and read it. And so my teacher would encourage us to keep up with current events. And even today, if I fail to read a newspaper, I feel like I'm not fully dressed, like something is wrong. So I have to read a newspaper. And being in Washington now, I can read the Washington Post, I can read the New York Times every day, in addition to reading the Atlanta Constitution.
What world events had the most impact on you while you were growing up?
When I was growing up, as a young child, I heard about war and violence, how people were being killed. And people would go off and sometimes they didn't return. And that made me very sad, really. And how many people were being bombed, losing their lives, their homes, their families. And so my uncle, two of my uncles went to the Army, one went in the Navy, and they all returned. But there was other relatives that I knew and people I knew they did not return. And so I grew up with this idea that we should try to do something to make the world a little more peaceful and safe for everybody.
Of all the lessons that you have learned from your parents, which do you feel has been the most valuable to you as an adult?
Of all the lessons I learned from my parents, I think what I learned more than anything else, to work and work hard, not to give up or give in or give out. Sometimes I would complain to my mother. I said, this work is too hard. This work is too hard. And she would say to me, hard work has never killed anybody. And I would say, it's about to kill me. And she would say, boy, you do your job. You catch up. And I had to catch up. And she taught me a wonderful lesson. But she also, along with my father, taught me to be kind. To be kind to everybody. And not to say bad things about people. And I heard a guy once say, if you cannot say something good about someone, just don't say anything.
What is the one thing that you most want people to remember you about?
More than anything else, I would love for people to remember that I tried to do my best. I tried to do my part to help make things better for all human beings and leave this world a little more peaceful and a little greener, and to remember that I used what I had to try to do some good.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.